University students are using social networking sites to confess their secrets, but the University of KwaZulu-Natal is not impressed and wants to take legal action. To discuss the implications of confessing on such sites, we're joined by media law consultant Emma Sadlier. Emma, good to see you again. Thanks for coming in. Harmless fun, would you say, or are they courting legal disaster here?
Well, I think it's a combination of both. I think that it's a wonderful example of how people are prepared to say things in the online world that they wouldn't say in the real world. And I think that cloaking themselves in perceived anonymity is a very, very difficult and dangerous legal stance to take. We are seeing people who think they're anonymous suddenly not being anonymous anymore. And that can have very serious real-world consequences, both in the form of legal court action and also personal reputational consequences. You know, does a potential employer want to hire somebody who's been saying this kind of stuff online?
Well, that's one of the questions that I was going to put to you. I mean, in the exuberance of youth, you can commit all these sorts of mistakes. But once you leave university and you're out on the marketplace, are you fair game if an employer decides he doesn't want to employ someone who's done the kind of things?
If it's in the public domain, you're fair game, and I think we really need to get that message out. What we've done is empower people with this incredibly powerful tool in the form of sort of instant access to an international public platform. So what might be said in the heat of the moment, or thinking that you're anonymous, or just really not thinking twice about these things, can have quite severe personal repercussions. Before, I think just about every employer, every potential employer, screens candidates on the basis of what information is available to them. There was a case just recently in England where a 17-year-old youth counsellor lost her job because of tweets that she posted when she was 14 years old. So what you put out there is like a tattoo. It's very, very difficult to get information removed from the internet. So the message, I think, is really just, okay, if you're going to use these sites, let it be a bit of harmless fun. Tell people that you have a crush on them, for example, but really don't say anything too risque, because it could come back to bite you.
Let's talk about the university's rights in this regard. I mean, the University of KwaZulu-Natal particularly is trying to get this Facebook page shut down, or it's considering doing that because it's bad for the university's reputation. What's your feeling on that?
Well, there are huge reputational consequences for some of these universities, because what's happened, in the same way that sort of in the Arab Spring, people were suddenly empowered with this anonymous tool to say things against their government, so too students are now speaking out against their universities. And if you have a look at the content on some of these pages, and it's not confined to UKZN, we've seen it at WITS and Rhodes and UCT as well, and they're very popular. They've been around for sort of a matter of a week or two, and they've already all sort of exceeded 10,000 likes. So there's broad publication here. And they are saying things, they're commenting against the university, they're saying things about their lecturers, that they're not good enough, that they're, that the facilities that they've been given are not sufficient, and people are really empowered and emboldened by this cloak of anonymity to say what they want to. But I think the risk is, legally, who do you hold responsible? And what the law is telling us in South Africa, at least, is that the administrator of a website, of a Facebook page, is responsible for the content on that page, in the same way as a newspaper editor takes responsibility for the content of the newspaper. So too does the administrator of a Facebook page take responsibility for the content on that Facebook page, regardless of whether they wrote it themselves.
You spoke about something very interesting, and you put it in the context of the Arab Spring and the sort of, we know what change resulted from that. If, for example, you've got a situation as we did have very recently at WITS, where there was a sex scandal involving certain lecturers. I mean, if that were the forum in which something like that were aired, what would be the consequences? Well,
I think that it's such a good question, because people need to speak out. I often say when I'm teaching is that the best thing about social media is that it gives everyone a voice. The worst thing about social media is that it gives everyone a voice. So I think, provided that voice is used responsibly, without malice, without the intention of taking people down, as it were, without reason, then I think that it's, such a powerful tool. It's given everyone this freedom of expression. But that freedom of expression doesn't come without limitations. So as soon as you start sort of stepping on the toes of other people's reputation, dignity, privacy, and there are some extraordinary revelations on these Facebook confession pages. You see people really infringing the privacy of others, naming and shaming, and sometimes I would assume that there is, a strong legal defense to some of those comments, but often I think people just really exploit the anonymity of it to bully other people, and that can be dangerous.
I mean, does the buck stop with the administrator of that page, Or could we see the kind of action taken where universities begin to expel students who bring them into disrepute?
Yeah, you've touched on such an important point, because the code of conduct, the sort of the disciplinary code which applies to students while they're at university, certainly extends to their conduct online. For as long as they can be identified as students of the institution, that code of conduct would apply to them. So it's not just the legal considerations, it's also the contract that you have with the university. And that contract tells you how you can behave and what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. So you do see, I mean, I saw some people effectively, to use a colloquialism, busting themselves, saying that they'd cheated in exams, saying that they were able to access exam papers before the exams had taken place. These are very serious confessions. And, you know, we see it all over social media where people are, you know, documenting their crimes and really facing the law about it. So I think that this, you know, it's going to be a very interesting field to watch. In the States, they've taken, because these Facebook pages are not confined to South Africa. In the US, the police have started shutting down these pages on the request of the schools and the universities. But in most circumstances, they just really counsel the students and get them to delete comments which are offensive. You see, there's a pre-screening process. You use this tool which cloaks you in anonymity, and then the administrators of the Facebook page decide which confessions to post. So there is really a real sort of prior editorial intervention on the part of the Facebook administrator in deciding what goes out there. And the more you monitor these pages and the more you have editorial control, the more you become liable legally. So it's a very, very dangerous platform. It can be used for good. I think that, you know, the sort of getting public interest out there is very important, but it can be used dangerously.
Very interesting indeed. Emma Sadlier, thank you very much for your time.
News that moves. eNCA.com.